Welcome back to the podcast. Another preview, NRL Finals Week 3. Can't wait for this weekend. Two absolute cracking games. The top four as well, which is nice and handy. It actually levels out the competition and shows who has been in standouts all year. And it's been these four teams, it's probably safe to say, especially consistency wise. So, really keen. Obviously, this episode normally is done with Luke from the Rugby League Lounge. Unfortunately, Luke was a late withdrawal, has been a bit sick and a bit crook. So, have to do this on me, Pat Malone. So, I hope you don't get too bored, but I'll keep it interesting for you. I'll try to keep it quite quick as well and just go through both teams and talk about the reasons why I believe they can or can't win on the weekend and just go through overall the sort of the team lists and things like that as well. So, as always, let's get started. The first game, Friday night, 7:50 at Core Stadium, Penrith Panthers versus the Melbourne Storm. Penrith obviously finishing first, the Melbourne Storm finishing third. Obviously, once again, a massive thank you to Random Stats Guy. Give me a couple of stats for this game. For the Storm, Ivan Cleary has never won 3 games in a row against Craig Bellamy. So a bit of a hoodoo there that can be broken on Friday night, and obviously Penrith are heavy favourites to do so. The Penrith Panthers won 8 of their last 10 at a core and 6 of their 8 finals games at the venue. So a really good history at that venue. Really hard to back against the Panthers there. Have only lost in Sydney once since May and haven't lost to a top 8 team since round one. And we all know who that team was as well, the Brisbane Broncos. So obviously the stats heavily on Penrith's favour. The bookies heavily on Penrith's favour. Let's get into it and see if we can find a weakness. Just quickly, let's go through the lineup. So obviously for the Penrith Panthers, fullback Dylan Edwards, on the wings, Taruva and Brian To'o. In the centres, big welcome back to Isaac Tungle and Stephen Crichton. In the halves, Jerome Luai is penciled in to come back. We will get confirmation, obviously, past this episode being recorded, but at this stage, he is in, partnering Nathan Cleary. Leota Fisher Harris is your props. Mitch Kenny is your hooker. Sorensen, Martin, Isaiah Yeo in the back row, and Lock. Cogger's been moved to the bench. Lindsay Smith, Spencer Lenu, and Luke Gunner. Soren Peachy, Matt Eisenhurst, Zach Hosking, Luke Summerton, and Thomas Jenkins are on the Pine and in the extended bench. For the Storm, Nick Meaney fullback, Warbrick and Remus Smith are your wingers. Marion Sever and Olam, so it's the same backline that won on the weekend. Hughes is in at halfback, which is massive. Munster is the 5'8". Interesting to once again, keep an eye on late mail to make sure and confirm that Jerome Hughes is in. I have a feeling he will play. The Storm need him if they're to win. Kamakamika, Christian Welsh, and Harry Grant are your front rows. Trent Liero, Katoa, Josh King are your back rowers. Wishart, Eisenhuth, Nelson Asafa Solomona, Tarek Sims are on the bench. Grant Anderson, Bronson Garlick, unfortunately been moved to off the bench altogether and on the extended bench. Bar Logo, which I've had comments about earlier in the past that he needs to be there. I'm surprised he's still not. Tebai Marawa and Chris Lewis. So let's get into the game. Obviously, general thoughts here with the Penrith Panthers are heavy favourites, been a class above pretty much the rest of the competition all year. I don't think the Melbourne Storm have actually got to their best football still, and I don't know if they are going to get to the Melbourne Storm that we're used to seeing. That's the problem I'm seeing here with the Melbourne Storm is I know they won on the weekend, but it was luck, wasn't it? They weren't able to have much organisation there around setting up for field goals and things like that. It was a spur of the moment Cameron Munster piece of brilliance that got him home. Otherwise, for 79 and a half minutes of that game, the Melbourne Storm were outplayed by a Sydney Roosters side that was missing some key personnel. And don't forget, first week of the finals, Brisbane Broncos obviously absolutely wiped the floor with the Melbourne Storm as well. So I don't think they're carrying much form into this final series at all and not really playing their greatest football. I've said it last week and a few of the other weeks and on other episodes as well that the Melbourne Storm look tired. I think this might be a bridge too far, and I can see obviously Penrith doing this job quite easily. Let's look at some of the weaknesses though for Penrith Panthers, and there's not much. The weakness for mine is the fact that is two of their good key players underdone in obviously Tunga, and we've heard Jerome Luai now. I have a feeling they're not going to push Luai. If he's not ready come 24-hour mark or before kickoff, Cogger will come in, and he's done a great job. And Nathan Cleary's in that good a form. He could do it by himself, I think, in the halves. But just be interesting if, in fact, because we've seen in the past other teams, they name these players to play and then they go down within 20, 30, 40 minutes and it stuffs up everything. You have to shift people. That's not a position the Panthers will want to get themselves in because then they're weak and then the Storm can pounce on that. Weaknesses for the Storm, as I said just before, just the current form. And for mine, it was really eye opening when they was trying to set up for the field goal last week to level it up. The lack of organisation there, and I know Munster and Harry Grant were both there, so you'd think it'd be pretty good. But there was many times during a few of those sets there, they just looked completely lost. And if Hughes is to play and he is one of those players that go down, then there's concern there with the organizational skills of the players remaining. And I don't know if it's once again that basically that tiredness, that fatigue factor for the Storm, but they're just not quite there at the moment. And yeah, it just looks like they've possibly played their grand final last week. It's a massive game. It's hard to get up for those 2 weeks in a row. It's a disadvantage of losing that first week's finals game for a top four team. And yeah, this might be too hard for the Melbourne Storm. For the strengths for the Penrith Panthers, pretty much everything. The Penrith Panthers have been so good this year, so consistent. Surprised by to a few of us who probably said they were going to come down a little bit to the pack, and they've just been almost a class above us at every other team in the competition. The other strength is Nathan Cleary. His form at the moment is unreal. Really taking this team by himself, really, without Luai, and just owning everything. So it'll be interesting how he plays with Luai there, if he continues to play how he is. As I said earlier, I think Nathan Cleary can do everything by himself for this team, and it would not surprise me if, as I said, they'd let Luai have one more week's rest with the confidence that side currently has. They can do this job. Strength for the Storm. I think Harry Grant, the fact that there's no Bronson Garlic on the bench is forcing Harry Grant to play 80 minutes. And if the Melbourne Storm are to play their best football, it needs to be with a Harry Grant playing 80 minutes. He's the best hooker in the game, especially for the big games. We've seen some massive moments where I know he doesn't play 80 minutes for Queensland, but for my club footy, big games, he needs to be on the field 80 minutes. You need your best players playing for as long as possible. That's the same for like players like Nelson Solomona. I'd be pumping his minutes out as much as I could if I was Bellamy. But yeah, Harry Grant for mine, definitely not an option to start off the bench. Needs to be there from start to finish. And if the Storm are to pull a massive upset out, it needs to be off the back of Harry Grant's brilliance from dummy half. Player to watch. I mentioned earlier, Nathan Cleary, just everything he's doing is turning to gold, and his game against the Warriors. I know even though it was without Johnson, which was huge, and we've seen that from last week's performance for the Warriors, they're a different beast. Just his control, like Warriors weren't too bad in finals week one. I know the scoreline blew out, but that's thanks to this man, Nathan Cleary, and how good he is at organising things. So Nathan Cleary there for mine, player to watch out for. My prediction, unfortunately, I just think Penrith Panthers are too good, too classy across the park. This week's break, exactly what they probably need with all their rep players that they've got as well. Penrith 13 plus, I think, is an absolute moral for this one. Now, the Brisbane Broncos taking on the Warriors, obviously second versus fourth. Saturday, 7:50, Suncorp Stadium. Cannot wait for this game. This is going to be an absolute cracker. I think this could be the best game of the year. This could be better than what the grand final ends up being. This game, atmosphere-wise, the sort of footy we're going to see, I feel like it's going to be off the charts. I cannot wait. So the rando stats, once again, thank you to Random Stats Guy. If you haven't already, please go give him some love on social media. For the Warriors, have a winning record against the Broncos in their last 10 meetings. So that's quite good to have at least a winning record against them there. Lost their last 4 games at Suncorp and only won 2 of their last 9 games at the venue. So Suncorp is a bit of an unhappy hunting ground for the Warriors, it seems, at the moment, which is weird because I know they get a lot of Warriors fans, a lot of Kiwi fans up here on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane area, southeast Queensland. So it'd feel like it's a really big home ground sort of advantage in a way that's on the weekend. The atmosphere is what I'm anticipating. For the Broncos, have won 11 of their last 13 night games as the favourite this season. So obviously they're going quite heavily backed as well. So that's a good stat to have. Have won 8 of their last 9 games. So they're on quite a win streak as well. And winning is basically addictive, and they're doing that quite well. Let's have a look at the team lineups for the Brisbane Broncos. Reece Walsh at fullback, Arthurs and Cobbo on the wings, Tony Staggs and Herbie Farnworth in your centres, Ezra Mam and Reynolds are your halves, Flegler, Haas and Billy Walters is in your front row, Capewell, Ricky Carrigan are your back rowers, Tyson Smoothie, Pia Cura, Hetherington and Palacia is on the bench. Corey Oates on the extended bench. So is Marty Tapau, Corey Jensen, Jock Madden, and Tristan Saylor. For the Warriors, it's Chance Nickel Klostad at fullback, Dallin Watani Zelezniak on the wings with Marcelo Montoya, Rocco Berry and Adam Pompey are your centres, Tamari Martin, Sean Johnson in the halves, Aiden Fanor Blake, Wade Egan, Mitchell Barnett is your front rowers, Jackson Ford, Niakora and Harris are your back rowers. Dylan Walker is on the bench with Tavanga, Bailey Sirinen, and Josh Curran. On the extended bench, Freddie Lustig misses out. Tua Piki, Bunty Afoa, Loa Tua, and Edward Cossi. Sorry, guys, about the pronunciation. I should be better at that, but yeah, really, really apologise there. But some good teams, both on paper, look fantastic. Can't wait for this one. General thoughts for this game. The Brisbane Broncos, for mine, are on another level. I really am so sure on the Broncos winning this competition at the moment. It's not funny, and I'll go through reasons why a bit more in detail as we go through this preview. But I'm just loving everything I'm seeing from the Brisbane Broncos form. They've got the form. Their big name players are playing to their almost their best that we've seen them playing consistently as well, which is dangerous. For the Warriors, though, as I said earlier, they're going to have a lot of fans at this game. This could easily be a 50-50 split in terms of crowd. We know the Broncos fans are up and about at the moment, but so are the Warriors. The Warriors are going crazy. I love seeing it. I cannot wait to be at this game and experience what the atmosphere is going to be like. And that could spur the Warriors on, because the good thing for the Warriors was last week's game against the Knights wasn't a hard game. Like, it wasn't one of those tough slaughters where you come away from it going, oh, wow, I've been in an absolute war. Like, this has been ridiculous. So, really looking forward to seeing what energy the Warriors can bring, because they should still have quite a bit in the tank from that. Even that the Penrith game the first week, I think early on, you could tell that they were done. So it was sort of a, not that they would have put the foot off the pedal, but it was sort of like, okay, let's keep bit in reserve here. So I think both teams have come out full of energy and a great attacking football, but they've also both underestimated with their defense. So can't wait for that one. Weaknesses for the Broncos. 3 games in 5 weeks isn't enough. So obviously talking about the fact that they had to buy in round 25, so quite late on. They've had the week off last week. Sometimes people say you just need to keep playing at this time of year and just keep the legs ticking over. They've had 2 weeks off in the last 5 weeks, and it'll keep them fresh. They'll be definitely fresh, but will they lose just a little bit of that match awareness, fitness, and things like that? That could be something for the Broncos to just keep an eye and look out for, and could be something where the Warriors could pounce, because they've been playing week in, week out lately. Weaknesses for the Warriors. The come down factor from last week. I know I said it wasn't much in terms of, it didn't seem like a hard game, but what it would have been taxing emotionally. It would have been a massive game. They would have been up almost all week, being back at home training. The fans would have been around, open training sessions, all the like, up the wires everywhere they go. That would have been hard for them to come down from. Now, you can play with that emotion 100%, but what you can't do is go through a whole finals campaign trying to ride off that emotion. It's going to get to a point where the body just goes, or the mind just goes, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. It's actually really caught up with me, and I'm quite fatigued. So, just how they manage this week, the come down factor, as I said, is going to be a big thing, and it could be a weakness there for the Warriors. But as I said, that sort of home ground form might pick him straight back up. The strength for the Broncos, I did mention this a bit earlier, but I feel like the key is that all their key players, their big name players, are all in form. That's huge at this time of year, because then what happens is some of the lesser known players will just right off the back of that, they'll go, all right, I'm looking at Reece Walsh, I'm looking at Adam Reynolds, I'm looking at Payne Haas, Paddy Carrigan. All these boys are up firing. I'm looking at Stars, I'm looking at Farnworth. They're all firing. I can go with them. I can't let these players down. We're going with them. So that's the sort of thing for mine to look at, especially this time of year with teams when you're rating who can win the competition, who's proper favourites and things like that. I just think the Broncos have a really good mix at the moment. Even the coach Walters, he had a lot of people coming at him at the start of the year, but he's shut everyone up, and he just seems to be in that real purple patch for a coach as well, and just doing just enough. Like he doesn't seem to be strangling the players, letting them do what they need to do, but when the time's right, he grabs them and says, "This is what we've got to do." And the Broncos are all for it. I can't wait to see what they come out with. For the strength for the Warriors, I need to mention it. The fact that it could be a 50-50 crowd, it might even be a bit more Warrior. You never know, but the fact that it won't be as daunting as, say, if they were in Sydney Combank Stadium against one of the Western Sydney teams or something, or if they were down in Melbourne against the Melbourne Storm, it would have been really hard for them. But the fact that a lot of supporters have already purchased their tickets, are going to the game, and there's talk about it, that will spur them on. They'll feed off that energy because they're very loud. We all know what those Warriors fans are like. I love it. They're very loud. That will spur them on in those times where they're a bit sore, a bit fatigued, and they hear an up the wires or hear a Warriors chant. That will go a long way. The other thing is the difference Sean Johnson makes. He's playing again. He's backing up, obviously. The game again in the grand final, there's no way he was missing it. We've seen how good he was for them last week. Without him, I don't know what happens. They probably still win because the Knights were quite down and flat, but he's transformed this team this year. And I know a lot of players are playing so well. You don't want to single too many players out, but the fact of the matter is, Sean Johnston is the glue of this team. He's the heartbeat. He's the soul. He's on. The Warriors are well and truly in this contest. Player to watch, Adam Reynolds for mine. I just spoke about Sean Johnson. Let's talk about Adam Reynolds and his control for this Broncos side. We've seen Walters manage him so well the last few weeks leading up to this. His body just making sure he's right for these big games. And this is why he's on that contract with the Broncos and why they've brought him to the club is for these big games. This is where he makes his coin. This is where he'll go down as a Broncos great, as a Broncos legend. He'll have a job for life at the Broncos if he can get them through to winning a premiership. Cannot wait to see the battle between Reynolds and Sean Johnson. That is going to be insane in itself. But yeah, Adam Reynolds for mine needs to control this game exactly how he has been with the Broncos. Kicking game on point, steering Mam and Reece Walsh around, steering the forward pack. He does it all. He's the on-field coach, and that experience alone is priceless. Every team, I bet you right now, wishes they had an Adam Reynolds running around for them week in, week out. They would have won a lot more games than they probably already did this year. Prediction, I think it's gonna be a lot closer than a lot of people think. I know the bookies are probably saying this is an easy win to the Broncos, but I don't see it that way. I think the Broncos win. I think the Broncos 1-12 though. It'll be a up and down contest. It could be some points scored. It's supposed to be quite good weather up in Brisbane as well. Can't wait. And I said they'll play to the crowd. The crowd atmosphere will lift both sets of players. Cannot wait. But I think the Broncos 1-12. That's all we've got time for. I hope you did enjoy it. Sorry, it was just myself. Luke was, as I said, was a late withdrawal. Hope he's feeling better for next week's big grand final preview. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the footy on the weekend. Whoever you're going for, Penrith Storm, Broncos, Warriors, be proud of your side. They've gotten this far. One more win. They're in the big dance. Speak to you all next week.